I found a message on her phone. Tonight. Don't forget the key. It was from my best friend. I stared at the screen, the words sharp and uninvited, cutting through the quiet of our bedroom. My thumb hovered over the phone, but I didn't swipe it away. I just sat there, letting it sink in. Ryan. The guy I'd known since we were 12, the one who stood beside me when I married Emily. And now this. I set the phone back on the nightstand, exactly where she'd left it, and leaned back against the headboard. The shower was running, and Emily's faint humming drifted through the closed bathroom door. It was a sound I used to find comforting, but tonight it felt off, like a note played just out of tune. I'm not the type to lose my cool. I'm an architect. I build things. I solve problems. But this wasn't a blueprint I could redraw. When the shower stopped, I straightened up, smoothing the blanket over my lap. Emily came out, a towel wrapped around her, her dark hair dripping onto her shoulders. She glanced at me and smiled, a quick, casual thing. You're quiet tonight, she said, brushing her hair back. Rough day. Yeah, I lied, meeting her eyes. Just tired. She nodded and turned to the dresser, pulling out pajamas. She didn't push, didn't question it. That's how it's been lately, surface-level conversations, nothing deeper. I watched her move, her routine unchanged, but there was something in the way she carried herself. A little too deliberate, maybe. Or maybe I was looking for things that weren't there. I didn't sleep much that night. The message kept looping in my head. Tonight. Don't forget the key. What key? Our house key? Something else? And why Ryan? My mind churned through scenarios, meetings, secrets, betrayals, each one tightening the knot in my chest. But I didn't let it show. I couldn't, not until I knew more. The next morning, I went through our routine. Coffee, a quick goodbye as she headed to work. She kissed my cheek, her lips cool against my skin, and I wondered if she'd always been this distant or if I just missed it. After her car disappeared down the street, I called in sick. My boss didn't question it. I don't take days off often. I spent the day thinking, planning. If tonight meant tonight, I'd find out what they were up to. Emily had mentioned a girls' night a few days ago, and I believed her then. Now, it sounded like an excuse. When she left that evening, I waited 5 minutes, then grabbed my keys and followed her. She drove downtown, her taillights steady in the Friday traffic. I stayed back, careful not to get too close. She pulled into the parking lot of a hotel, a modern one, all glass and steel, the kind of place that screams business trips or something less innocent. I parked across the street, watching as she stepped out, glanced around, and walked inside. Then Ryan showed up. He parked near the entrance, got out, and scanned the lot like he was expecting someone. They met just outside the doors, a quick hug, nothing too obvious, but enough to make my grip tighten on the steering wheel. They went in together, and I sat there, the engine idling, my pulse loud in my ears. I could have gone in, demanded answers right then. But I didn't. I needed more than a hunch, more than a hug in a hotel lobby. I drove home, the city lights blurring past, and decided to dig deeper. Over the next few days, I watched her closer. She kept her phone locked, the passcode new. I'd tried the old one when she was in the shower, but it didn't work. Her laptop was my next move. One afternoon, while she was at work, I found a notebook in her desk, a list of passwords scribbled inside. One worked. I opened her email and found it, a hotel booking confirmation, not just for tonight, but for nights stretching back weeks. All under her name. I printed it, folded it into my briefcase, and checked the dates. The next one was tomorrow. She'd been lying to me, not once, but over and over. I didn't yell, didn't pace. I just sat there, the paper in my hand, letting the truth settle. That night, we lay in bed, the space between us wide and silent. She didn't ask why I was quiet, didn't seem to notice. Maybe she was too caught up in her own world to care. I closed my eyes, the plan forming. Tomorrow, I'd be at that hotel. Tomorrow, I'd know everything. The next morning, I woke early, the reality of what lay ahead settling over me like a heavy blueprint I couldn't ignore. Emily slept beside me, her breathing soft and steady, oblivious to the unraveling of our life. For a moment, I studied her serene face, the way her hair spilled across the pillow, and wondered how she could carry such a lie so effortlessly. But I didn't linger. There was work to be done. I dressed quietly, slipping into a suit as if it were any other day, and tucked the printed hotel confirmation into my briefcase. I left before she woke, the house silent behind me. At the office, I moved through meetings and drafts, my hands steady on the pencil, my voice level with clients. But my mind was elsewhere, mapping out the hours ahead, each step a line drawn toward the inevitable. By mid-afternoon, I couldn't wait any longer. I told my assistant I had a site visit, an easy excuse, and drove downtown. The hotel rose into view, its sleek glass exterior catching the gray sky. I parked across the street, the same spot I'd used when I first suspected her, and checked my watch. Emily's reservation was for 7 p.m., but she'd be early. She always was when she had something to hide. I sat there, eyes on the entrance, the engine off. At 6:45, her car rolled into the lot. She stepped out in a black dress I didn't recognize, her hair swept up in a way that felt deliberate. She glanced around, nervous, before heading inside. Minutes later, Ryan arrived, his walk too casual, too sure. My grip tightened on the steering wheel, but I stayed still, counting the seconds. I gave them 10 minutes, enough time to check in, reach the room, let their guard drop. Then I crossed the street and entered the lobby. The air smelled of polished wood and faint perfume. At the front desk, a young clerk smiled up at me. "Welcome, sir. How can I help you?" "I'm meeting my wife," I said, my tone even. "Emily Carter. She checked in earlier." The clerk typed, then nodded. "Yes, room 412. Should I call up?" "No need. I'll surprise her." She paused, unsure, but I offered a practiced smile, calm, disarming. She slid a keycard across the counter, and I took it, my pulse steady but loud in my ears. The elevator ride stretched out, each floor ticking by like a metronome. I rehearsed the words in my head, not for their sake but for mine. I needed to say them right, to keep control. The fourth-floor hallway was hushed, the carpet swallowing my steps. Room 412 waited at the end, the doors slightly ajar, careless of them. I stopped, listening. Emily's laugh floated out, light and unguarded, followed by Ryan's low voice. I pushed the door open and stepped in. They were on the bed, half-dressed, caught mid-motion. Emily's eyes flew wide, her face draining of color. Ryan lurched to his feet, stammering, his shirt unbuttoned. "Jake." Emily breathed. "What are you?" "Save it," I said, my voice a flat line. I pulled the hotel confirmation from my briefcase and dropped it onto the bed. "I know." Ryan moved toward me, hands up like he could stop this. "Listen, man, this isn't what it looks like." I met his gaze, unflinching. "It looks exactly like what it is." Emily stood, clutching the sheet. "Jake, please, let me explain." "There's nothing to explain." I shifted to Ryan. "You've been lying to me. Both of you. For how long?" "It just happened," Ryan said, his voice cracking. "We didn't mean." "That's your defense?" I cut in. "It just happened?" Emily reached for me, tears brimming. "I'm sorry, Jake. I never wanted to hurt you." I stepped back. "But you did." Silence fell, thick and heavy. Their faces were a mess of shock and guilt, searching for a lifeline I wouldn't throw. Emily's lips parted, but no words came. Ryan just stared, defeated. I turned to go. Emily grabbed my arm. "Wait, please. Let's talk." I shook her off, firm but not rough. "We're past talking." Ryan's voice followed me, weak. "Jake, don't do this." I didn't respond. The door clicked shut, and I stood in the hallway, the stillness settling over me. My hands didn't shake. My chest didn't ache. There was only clarity, sharp and cold. In the lobby, I returned the key card to the clerk, who eyed me with faint worry. I smiled again, mechanical, and walked out. The drive home was quiet, my thoughts orderly. The house, our life, it was compromised now, a structure too cracked to salvage. I'd leave, start over somewhere else. When I got home, the place was dark. Emily hadn't followed. I doubted she would tonight. I packed a suitcase, clothes, essentials, nothing sentimental, and was zipping it up when the front door opened. Emily stood there, tears streaking her face. "Jake, please," she choked out. "Don't go." I looked at her, the woman I'd once built my world around, and felt empty. "I'm done, Emily. We're done." She crumpled, sobbing, but I walked past her. The night air hit me as I stepped outside, suitcase in hand, each step lighter than the last. I didn't know where I'd land, but I knew I wouldn't look back. The motel room smelled faintly of stale smoke and cleaning solution, a sharp contrast to the polished wood and lavender of our home. I'd picked it deliberately cheap, out of the way, a place where no one would look for me. The neon sign buzzed outside, its light slicing through the thin curtains, painting jagged lines across the floor. I dropped my suitcase by the door and sat on the bed, the springs creaking under my weight. My hands rested on my knees, fingers still, but my mind was anything but. I'd walked out on Emily less than an hour ago, her sobs echoing in my ears as I closed the front door behind me. The image of her crumpled on the living room floor lingered, but I didn't let it pull me back. She'd made her choice. Ryan, the hotel, the lies, and now I was making mine. The suitcase held the bare minimum. A few shirts, jeans, toiletries. Nothing from our shared life. No wedding band, no framed photos. That life was ash now, and I wasn't about to sift through it. My phone vibrated on the nightstand, her name flashing across the screen. I let it ring out, then flipped it face down. She'd called 4 times already, left messages I wouldn't check. What could she say that I hadn't already seen in that hotel room? The truth was laid bare. Her in his arms, the crumpled sheets, the guilt in her wide eyes. I didn't need her voice to confirm it. I stood and paced the small room, the carpet rough under my shoes. My chest tightened, not with panic, but with something heavier. Resolve, maybe, or the weight of what came next. I'm an architect. I design structures, solve problems with clean lines and logic. This wasn't a drafting table I could clear, but I could still approach it methodically. Step 1, distance. Step 2, dismantle. I pulled my laptop from the suitcase and set it on the wobbly desk. A quick search brought up divorce lawyers in the area, names, reviews, specialties. I needed someone efficient, someone who'd cut through the mess without dragging it out. No mediation, no second chances. I typed out emails to 3 firms, keeping it brief. Married 8 years, no kids, infidelity on her part, seeking a fast resolution. My fingers moved steadily, the words clinical, detached. It was strange, boiling down a decade of my life to a few paragraphs, but it felt right, like drafting a demolition plan. By 1 a.m., I'd sent the emails and shut the laptop. Sleep wasn't an option, not with the adrenaline still humming in my veins. I lay back on the bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling. The anger was there, a low burn in my gut, but I kept it contained. Rage wouldn't rebuild anything. I needed focus, control, the things that had gotten me through late nights at the firm, through every challenge I'd ever faced. Morning came fast, gray light seeping through the curtains. I showered in the cramped bathroom, the hot water barely lukewarm, and shaved with a steady hand. The face in the mirror was mine, tired, shadowed, but composed. I dressed in a suit, grabbed my briefcase, and headed to the office. The city hummed around me, indifferent, as I merged into traffic. At my desk, I dove into work, blueprints, emails, a client call about a delayed permit. My assistant, Sarah, poked her head in around noon. "No lunch today, Jake?" she asked, eyebrow raised. "Too much to do," I said, not looking up. She didn't push, just nodded and left. I was grateful for that. Work was my lifeline now, a grid I could navigate when everything else was chaos. Emily's texts had shifted from please to apologies by then. "Jake, I'm so sorry. Please just talk to me." I deleted them unread. Ryan hadn't reached out, and I hoped he wouldn't. I wasn't sure I could keep my calm if he did. That night, I was locking up my car outside the motel when I saw him. Ryan, leaning against the hood, hands in his pockets. He looked wrecked, unshaven, eyes sunken. My steps slowed, but I didn't stop. "Jake," he said, straightening. "I need to talk to you." "No, you don't." I kept my voice level, my eyes on the motel door. "It was a mistake," he blurted. "I swear, I didn't mean for this to happen." I turned then, meeting his gaze. "You didn't mean to sleep with my wife? Or you didn't mean to get caught?" He flinched. "I'm sorry, man. We've been friends forever." "Were," I corrected. Past tense. "Jake, please. Stay away from me, Ryan." I stepped past him, my shoulder brushing his, and didn't look back. Inside the room, I locked the door and poured a glass of bourbon from a bottle I'd picked up. The burn steadied me, dulled the edge of his voice still ringing in my ears. I sat by the window, the city sprawling beyond the glass. The divorce would take months, maybe longer if Emily fought it, but I'd get through. I'd find a new place, carve out a new life. The hurt was still there, raw and jagged, but beneath it, something else flickered, determination, maybe even freedom. I'd lost everything I thought mattered, but I wasn't broken. Not yet. The motel smelled of mildew and regret, a fitting backdrop for the mess my life had become. I'd been here a week, staring at the cracked ceiling, replaying that night at the hotel. Emily's guilty eyes, Ryan's stammering excuses, my own voice, eerily calm, telling them it was over. I'd walked away then, but walking away wasn't enough anymore. The anger had festered, turning into something hard and unyielding. Emily didn't just break my trust, she broke us. Now, I'd make sure she paid for it. I started with the practical stuff. Divorce was the first step, clean and final. I found a lawyer through a coworker, Mark Voss, a grizzled guy with a reputation for winning ugly cases. His office was cluttered, stacks of files teetering on every surface, but he got straight to business. I handed him everything. The text I'd seen on her phone, "Miss you already, babe," from Ryan. The hotel receipt I'd screenshot, photos I'd snapped that night through the window before I walked in. Mark skimmed it all, nodding. "Solid evidence," he said, tapping the papers. "Adultery's a strong angle. You want alimony? The house?" "No," I said, my voice tight. "Just out. I want her to feel this." He smirked, like he'd heard that before. "We'll file today. She'll get served by end of week." It was only the beginning. Divorce would hit her wallet and her pride, but I needed more. Something personal, something she couldn't ignore. Back at the motel, I pulled out my laptop and logged into our shared cloud account. She hadn't changed the password. Idiot. There they were, photos of us on vacation, her smiling at me like I was her whole world. And then, buried in a folder she thought I'd never check, selfies of her and Ryan. Kissing, laughing, mocking me without even knowing it. I downloaded everything, then deleted the originals. She'd notice eventually, but by then, it'd be too late. I picked the worst of the bunch, a shot of them tangled in bed, her wedding ring glinting on her finger, and emailed it to her parents. No subject, no explanation, just the image. Her mom called me an hour later, voice shaking. "Jake, what's this? Tell me this isn't real." "It's real," I said. "Ask your daughter." She hung up, probably to call Emily. Good. Let her squirm. Next, I hit our social circle. I posted on my Facebook, a platform I barely used, tagging mutual friends, "Divorcing Emily. Caught her with Ryan. Done being lied to." I attached a cropped version of one photo, her face clear, his blurred. The comments exploded. "No way. She's trash. Man, you deserve better." My phone buzzed nonstop, texts from buddies offering beers and sympathy. Emily's sister messaged me, furious. "You're ruining her life." I didn't reply. She'd ruined mine first. But the real move came that afternoon. I knew Emily's routine, yoga class at 2 p.m. every Wednesday. I drove to the house, my keys still working despite everything. The place felt foreign now, a museum of a life I didn't recognize. In the garage, I found her prized possession, the vintage bike she'd restored, a candy-red Schwinn she'd babied like a pet. I loaded it into my trunk, drove to a pawn shop, and sold it for $200. The guy didn't ask questions. I texted her a photo of the receipt. Hope he was worth it. When I got back to the motel, she was already blowing up my phone, calls, texts, voicemails. I ignored them until she sent, "You sold my bike?" I called her back then, ready to hear her unravel. "Jake, how could you?" she screamed, her voice raw. "That was mine. Like our marriage was mine." I told back. "You're destroying me," she cried. "My parents won't talk to me." "You did that," I said, cutting her off. "You and Ryan. I just made sure they saw it." She sobbed, loud and messy. "I'm sorry, okay? I messed up. Can't we talk?" "Talk?" I laughed, sharp and hollow. "You talk plenty to him. We're done." I hung up, her wails cut off mid-breath. The room went quiet, just the hum of the motel's ancient AC. I expected to feel lighter, victorious even, but all I felt was tired. Revenge wasn't sweet, it was bitter, exhausting. Still, it was necessary. Emily had to face the wreckage she'd made, not just of me, but of herself. That night, I lay on the lumpy mattress, staring at the ceiling again. The divorce was coming, the truth was out, and her precious bike was gone. It wasn't joy that settled in my chest, it was resolve. She'd lost more than she'd ever imagined, and I was just getting started. The rain tapped a steady rhythm against the windows of my new apartment, a small studio perched above the city's restless hum. I stood at the counter, a half-empty coffee mug in hand, staring at the bare walls. 3 months had passed since I'd walked away from the house I'd built with Emily. Our house, once a symbol of stability, now just a hollow shell. The divorce was final, the papers signed, but the echoes of betrayal still lingered, like cracks in a foundation I couldn't repair. I'd chosen this place for its simplicity, one room, high ceilings, a view of the skyline I'd helped shape. As an architect, I'd always found comfort in structure, in the way lines and angles could create something lasting. But now, my own life felt like a collapsed blueprint, scattered pieces I was only beginning to pick up. The walls were empty except for a single framed sketch, a design I'd drawn years ago, a bridge spanning a river. It felt fitting, a reminder that I could still build something, even if it was just for myself. The phone rang, cutting through the quiet. I glanced at the screen. Emily. My thumb hovered over the decline button, instinct urging me to keep her out. We hadn't spoken since the confrontation, since I'd stood in that hotel lobby, voice steady but heartbreaking, and told her I knew everything. She'd cried, begged, but I'd walked away. Yet now, something made me answer. "Jake," she said, her voice fragile, like glass about to shatter. "I didn't think you'd pick up." I set the mug down, the ceramic clinking against the counter. "What do you want, Emily?" I needed to hear your voice. To say I'm sorry, one more time." I leaned against the counter, the cold edge pressing into my back. "You've said it before. It doesn't change anything." "I know," she whispered. "But I keep thinking about what I did to us. To you. I was selfish, and I hate myself for it." I didn't reply right away, letting her words settle. The rain outside thickened, streaking the windows like tears. For months, I'd replayed every moment. The late nights I'd spent at the drafting table, the dinners she'd shared with Ryan under the guise of friendship. I'd built my life around trust, precision, only to watch it crumble. "Why now?" I asked finally, my tone flat. "Why call me now?" She hesitated. "I'm moving away. Tomorrow." I just didn't want to leave without trying to make peace. Peace. The word felt distant, a design I hadn't yet sketched. I walked to the window, staring out at the city's jagged silhouette. "Where are you going?" "West Coast," she said. "A fresh start, I guess." A bitter laugh escaped me. "Funny. That's what I'm doing here." "Jake." She stopped, then started again. "I never meant to hurt you. You were always so focused, so sure of everything. I felt like I was fading, and Ryan. He saw me. It was a mistake, but it wasn't about you." I clenched my jaw, her words slicing through the numbness I'd cultivated. "You could have told me you were unhappy. I would have listened." "I was scared," she admitted. "Scared you'd see me as weak, or that you'd pull away. I made the wrong choice, and I'll carry that forever." I turned from the window, pacing the small space. Part of me wanted to lash out, to tell her how her choices had gutted me, how I'd trusted Ryan like a brother only to find him in that hotel room with her. But another part, the part that had spent weeks sorting through the wreckage, knew anger wouldn't rebuild anything. "I don't hate you," I said, surprising myself. "I did for a while. But I'm tired, Emily. Tired of carrying it." She exhaled, a shaky sound. "Thank you. That means more than you know." We fell silent, the rain filling the gap. I thought of the man I'd been before, confident, meticulous, blind to the fault lines beneath my marriage. I'd missed the signs, the late-night texts, the excuses, because I'd trusted the structure I'd built. Now, I saw it for what it was, a facade, beautiful but flawed. "How are you?" she asked softly. "Really?" I glanced around the apartment, the unpacked boxes, the single chair, the bridge sketch on the wall. "I'm figuring it out, day by day." "I'm glad," she said. "You deserve better than what I gave you." "Maybe," I replied, though I wasn't sure I believed it yet. "Good luck out west." "You too, Jake." The call ended, and I set the phone down, the quiet returning. I walked to the sketch on the wall, tracing the lines of the bridge with my eyes. It wasn't just a design, it was a promise, a way across. My marriage had fallen, but I could still build something new. Not a grand monument. Not yet, but a foundation. Solid, simple mine. The skyline stretched before me, a jagged silhouette against the fading light. I stood on the balcony of my new apartment, a glass of bourbon in hand, the cool evening air brushing my skin. It had been a year since that night, the night I found the message on Emily's phone, the night my world cracked open. A year since I'd packed a suitcase and walked out of the life I thought I'd known. Now here I was, in a different city, with a different view, a different version of myself. The phone buzzed on the table behind me, pulling me from my thoughts. I glanced at the screen. A text from Lydia, the project coordinator I'd met at the community center opening. "Dinner tomorrow? My treat this time." I smiled. Typing back a quick "sounds good." We'd been seeing each other casually for a few months. Nothing serious, just easy company and shared laughs. It was a start, a step towards something new, And that was enough for now. I turned back to the view, the city lights flickering to life below. A year ago, I couldn't have imagined this, standing here, feeling steady. I'd spent weeks in that motel after confronting Emily and Ryan at the hotel, drowning in whiskey and what-ifs. Then months clawing my way out, one small victory at a time. The divorce, the move, the new job. It had all been part of the rebuild, each step a brick laid in a new foundation. Emily had faded into the background of my life, a shadow that no longer loomed so large. I'd heard through mutual friends that she'd moved to the coast, started over in some small town. Ryan, too, had disappeared from my orbit, his name now just a footnote in a story I rarely revisited. I didn't wish them ill. I didn't wish them anything. They were part of a past I'd outgrown, a blueprint I'd scrapped for something stronger. The anger had dulled over time, replaced by something closer to understanding not of what they did, but of myself. I trusted too blindly, ignored the cracks in the structure of our marriage. I'd been so focused on building a future that I hadn't noticed the foundation crumbling beneath us. But I'd learned. Trust wasn't a given anymore. It was something to be earned, tested, reinforced. I finished the bourbon and set the glass down, leaning against the railing. The bridge I'd designed, the one that had gotten me through those first brutal months, was nearly complete. I'd drive out to see it next week, watch the final beam slot into place. It was just a bridge, steel and concrete spanning a river, but to me, it was more. It was proof that I could still create something lasting, something that held weight. The door behind me slid open, and I turned to see my neighbor, an older guy named Tom, stepping out with a beer in hand. We'd struck up a friendship over shared grumbles about the building's temperamental elevator and the best takeout spots in the neighborhood. "Nice night," he said, nodding at the sky. "Yeah," I agreed. "Quiet." He chuckled. "You say that like it's a good thing." "It is." I glanced back at the city. Took me a while to appreciate it. Tom raised his beer in a silent toast and wandered back inside. I stayed a moment longer, letting the quiet sink in. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was mine, and that was enough. The sketch of the bridge hung above my desk, a reminder of where I'd been and where I was going. I sat down, opened my laptop, and pulled up the plans for the art center. There was work to do, walls to raise, spaces to shape. I leaned into it, the familiar focus settling over me. The past was behind me, the future unwritten. But for now, in this moment, I was exactly where I needed to be.